This Shabbat, Israelis watched 4 more hostages released from the hell that is Gaza, which means there are still 90 hostages left. Shalom, I'm Shani Ferguson from Jerusalem. Shabbat was very much a spectacle when it comes to Hamas in terms of releasing 4 hostages and doing it in the most theatrical way possible. And if you know anything about the Middle East, you know that the Middle East is all about poza. Poza is the presentation of who you would like people to believe you are. And so after this complete crushing of Hamas infrastructure in Gaza over the past year and a half, it was very important for them to present themselves as very much in charge. Now, while we have taken out many hundreds, if not thousands, of terrorists in Gaza, unfortunately, because civilians in Gaza now understand that if you're a part of Hamas, you will be taken care of. And if you're just a civilian, you will be used as fodder and a shield against the enemy. Many young men in Gaza have now been recruited to Hamas. In fact, according to the numbers that we've been given, there are more men now joining Hamas than Israel managed to take out during the war. Now, in one sense, the numbers are higher. Of course, it means that they're untrained. They're young men who have not been a part of the militant Hamas training. So in one sense, we're back to square one in terms of numbers, because give them a few months, a couple years, and they will be back trying to do another October 7th. And one of the tools they wanted to use to get there was the spectacle that was Shabbat. So in a very dramatic live presentation, you had Hamas come up with their trucks and the Red Cross come up with their trucks, and it was a standoff. It kind of looked like the Wild West, you know, in the movies where they kind of pull out a gun and shoot at each other. So you had all these innocent civilians surrounding the area. Of course, they wanted to see the spectacle that is the release of the hostages. And if you got to see the first round of releases from hostages and that wild crowd of people, that was very dangerous. And so this time around, they wanted to present more of like, we're in control and we can do things in an orderly fashion. And they walked up on the stage and they signed papers with the Red Cross. Thank you, Christianity, for being such a willing advocate for this Hamas presentation of legitimacy. And so they get up on stage, they sign papers as if this is like some sort of legitimate interaction between a governing party. And then they bring up the girls out of the cars. Girls, of course, get on stage, hold hands, raise their hands, even manage to flash a victory sign. And all this while they're surrounded by masked men. And I'm not sure exactly what kind of vibe they were looking for in terms of like, wow, we're a bunch of armed, masked men. And there's these 4 hostages on stage. Were they trying to look like, we're so big and bad, we can take women and hold them hostage for a year and a half and then like present them. They even lied about the clothes they gave them because they created these kind of like IDF uniforms that were just basically the color of IDF uniforms, but not actually IDF uniforms. And they said, oh, these are the original uniforms that they wore the day we captured them, which isn't true. They were captured in their pajamas, and the images are very, very difficult to watch. But I am waiting to see the final product of all the cameramen that were around from so many different angles and seeing these masked Hamas terrorists try to present themselves as a legitimate party. So those in the West need to know that all this is about presentation of power and legitimacy, and we can't give it to them. Of course, Hamas, as expected, did not keep up their end of the bargain, and there is still a hostage that was promised to be released today that hasn't been released. I did read an article that said that she is being held by the Islamic Jihad, which is a different terrorist organization in Gaza, and so they didn't want to give Hamas their hostage, which then reinforces that Hamas is not in charge. So it's a big battle of let's see who can show themselves more in control. Behind all those close-up shots of these terrorists are completely destroyed cities and towns and villages because they built terror tunnels under them, because they stored rockets and fired RPGs and all sorts of weapons from civilian areas. And therefore, you're looking at massive destruction for the civilian population. So again, downside is that the civilians realize, hey, you know, Hamas is going to steal the humanitarian aid. You know who they give it to? Hamas. So we want to be a part of Hamas because we want to eat. This is a difficult situation for them to be in. There are different conversations about giving them asylum in neighboring Arab countries. This is actually something that neighboring Arab countries have been avoiding since 1948, and that is absorbing refugees into their country, giving them citizenship, letting them replant. This is something that happened in Europe. There was a mass migration after World War II. There was all sorts of shuffling around of peoples, and countries just said, you know what, you guys can be absorbed into our country. That would have resolved many, many issues, but instead they wanted to keep the issue of Israel and the conflict alive. And so for decades, you have people, whole generations of people who have not been able to find a place, a quiet place to call home. And all of this ties into the Islamic agenda to remove Israel from the map. Today, thousands of Gazans were hoping that they could return back to the northern part of Gaza to see what is left of their homes. That part so far is not taking place because Hamas did not keep up their side of the deal, which was to return 5 hostages. Yesterday they did 4. So we'll keep you updated with what is to come. In the meantime, you can go visit our website, maozisrael.org, maozisrael.org, where you can get more information about what is happening in Israel and the various projects that we have going on. Until next time, I'm Shani Ferguson.